Hello everyone and welcome to the latest episode of SUGTalks. I'm Craig Dale, your host, and together with our special guests we'll take a deep dive into the topics, challenges and opportunities facing SAP users today. Please make sure you subscribe so you never miss another episode. I'm delighted to be joined today by Simon Nichols, Wellbeing Director at Thrive. And in today's mental health focused episode, we're going to be discussing wellbeing apps. So welcome, Simon. Great to see you again.
It's really good to see you as well, Craig. It's I can't remember when we last did the podcast, but in a way it feels like last week, and in a way it feels like last month, last year. It's a weird feeling.
It was last year. We were face to face in Birmingham, if I remember rightly.
Last year. I haven't seen you since last year. Hello, Craig.
Good to be back. Okay, just before we get into the subject, Simon, just for this week's icebreaker, I thought I'd ask you who or what your favourite cartoon character was when you were growing up. Now, while you think about that, I was kind of thinking about, I always feel you should embrace the inner child. So I suppose it doesn't have to be while growing up, it could be now. And, when I was kind of throwing this over in my mind, I'm not sure whether I have a favourite personally. And, I loved loads of them, from Tom and Jerry, Scooby-Doo, through to Popeye the Sailor Man. But I will have to say one of my favourites was Hong Kong Phooey. And I don't know whether you remember him, but remember the mild-mannered janitor, crime-fighting kung fu hero, and also, remember Inch-Eye Private Eye? Oh, wow. The thing's going through my mind now. Sorry, Simon, who's your favourite cartoon character?
Can't be. Yes, I very much remember Hong Kong Phooey. It was one of my favourites. I'm probably going to, but Hong Kong Phooey was always a little bit. It was just on the cusp because I'm a very young man, Craig, as you know. I'm barely even 49, even though my 50th birthday is next month. I might even be 50 by the time this podcast comes out. So I do feel a little bit old. So I'm going to go for sort of my mid young period. So I'm talking about sort of 9 and 10, and I really loved Jace and the Wheeled Warriors. Now, there might be a few people thinking, who is that? But that was it was basically sort of a manga type cartoon sort of thing, which is basically a person called Jace, and he had loads of sort of his mates in sort of weird cars, and they used to drive around and stuff. I also used to love Cities of Gold. It was an El Dorado, and it was basically an Incan sort of cartoon. These are all very, very weird, random cartoons that people out there are probably thinking, you absolute crazy person. But I believe you can find them all still on that favourite internet malarkey if you do search for them. So if anyone is interested in checking out Jace and the Wheeled Warriors or Cities of Gold, you'll be pleasantly surprised and drawn back to that sort of late 70s, early 80s cartoon genre.
Thank you, Simon. And okay, following that trip down memory lane and Cartoonville, just back to the topic in hand. And during the pandemic, we saw a rise in popularity of wellbeing apps, such as Headspace, Calm, countless others. And with this in mind, Simon, could you share some of the benefits that these apps can deliver?
When we first started talking about doing a podcast about wellbeing apps, at first I thought, how can we talk for sort of half an hour, 45 minutes about apps? And then I realised that they've taken over our world. Actually, when you think about any app, you think immediately of instant information, in many cases instant gratification. So I'm going to start this with a slightly weird stance of wellbeing apps, because I actually, at the same time as I love them, I actually think because their reliance on and for those of you that are listening, you can't see this, for those of you that reliance on our little mobile phones that I've held up, in order to access the Wellbeing app, you've got to go to one of the things that is sometimes the most detrimental thing to your well-being, and it's such a when I talk in on my courses and when I do webinars, and I always think about putting the phone aside, getting off of social media, and here we are talking about, well, actually we can use and leverage that social media element or those apps for the benefit of our well-being. So I think for a lot of people they're really important, because even though you're on your phone, you're taking yourself away from, I guess, other more, and I don't like to use the word harmful, but maybe detrimental apps such as Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Snapchat, all of the other fancy ones, and even WhatsApp, because I never really got WhatsApp as an app, despite its name as being WhatsApp. I never got it as a social media because I just thought it was a quick way, and I work really well with those quick informational bites. But actually, when I look at my phone and I see I've been on WhatsApp for an hour and a half out of any day, I'm thinking, whoa, I need to pull back from that. So, in a roundabout way, to answer your question, I think used sparingly and used at the right time, I think wellbeing apps are amazing. And we're going to talk about a few different ones as we go through today. But it'd be interesting to get your take on it, though, Craig. How do you see that whole evolution? Because SAP user group, you're at the forefront of tech and moving forward. So what's your personal views on in general, and then any well-being ones?
If we go back to what you mentioned there about the mobile, the smartphone device being actually detrimental to well-being and mental health, I think you're right there. In the social media element, I think we all probably spend too much time on. I can certainly say that I probably spend too much time on my device. I try not to. One of the kind of elements that I think you can utilize it for is for that feel-good factor, whether it's, rather than spending time delving into, I've mentioned this before, how Twitter can be rather toxic, delving into Twitter and then ending up in this downward spiral of negativity. And if you can use it to bring happy thoughts and happy things to mind, and make sure that, of course, we've talked before about the importance of sleep, and making sure you're not on it just before you go to sleep, so that you can get a good night's sleep. I think that's very important. But kind of like, there seems to be, I mentioned obviously the popularity and countless others. There seems to be a whole variety of apps out there, and some of them seem to have a specific focus. Is it kind of a horses for courses scenario? If you're feeling in a particular way, or you have potentially, I suppose, particular challenges, i.e. is Headspace great for I think it's a mindfulness kind of well-being app. You've got things like Talkspace. I think that's supposed to be labelled for depression, etc. Or am I just barking up the wrong tree here?
No, I think you're right. I think, and what's happened is, like anything, is there's been this proliferation. There's been this a sort of growth in most areas within that sort of development space, and sometimes it is really difficult to see the wood from the trees. And so when you say there's specific ones for specific times, I mean, there are sleep apps, ones that actually monitor and record your sleep, and I always have this conversation with people, and they say, I can't possibly leave my phone downstairs. Okay, why not? Well, it's my alarm clock. Now, we did quite well for alarm clocks for many hundreds of years, cockerels and all sorts of other things. And if that is your only reason, you can actually even people, on the Facebook Marketplace, you can find old alarm clocks. That's not really an excuse anymore. But if you do get one of the sleep, I think there's one that's called Awake or Reawake or something. The alarm in the morning actually wakes you up gently. So it starts playing sort of piped music in the background to allow you to come out of that heavier sleep into a light sleep. So yes, you can get ones for sleep. You can get ones for distractions, i.e., if you pick your phone up too many times in a given period of time, you kill your tree that you're growing. I think that's a fantastic one. You sort of you set like an hour, and in that hour, this oak tree is going to grow. And if you pick your phone up in that time, you kill your oak tree. And so you've got sort of motivational ones like that. And then you've got the brilliant meditative mindfulness, the headspaces, the calms. All of these are really geared towards taking you out of the moment. And again, what I love most about Headspace, and Headspace is one of my favorites, is that there's no videos. There are videos you can watch, but for the most part, you have to put your phone down and just listen to it. And I think that's quite an important thing, because if you've got one of these, again, the wellbeing apps that you have to enter things in, it's absolutely great if you're journaling. But a lot of people can't afford that sudden, I've got all the way through here, and now here's my in-app purchase. And suddenly, to access more cool stuff to make my mental health better, I've now got to find £9.99 a month. So there's that sort of trade-off between, I guess, the ones that are wholly free versus the ones that, it's a one-in payment. I mean, Headspace, for instance, and I know they do corporate ones, and I know they do free ones for the NHS. I'm not paid commission by Headspace, by the way, but you'll probably hear me and Craig talk about it a lot, because actually it's a fantastic app. But yeah, I think what we've noticed is, if there's been a gap in the market, whether it's sleep, whether it's food, whether it's exercise, whether it's motivation, whether it's individual betterment, whatever that looks like, anything that has a well-being slant to it will suddenly be developed. And while that's a good way, I before any of these these podcasts, I would do a little bit of Googling, because that's what people are going to do. They're going to go away and Google. And if you Google the best wellbeing apps, you'll see similar names coming into them, and then you'll see these weird sponsored apps that you've never heard of before, and it can be a minefield out there. And what I was surprised, and working in this space, is there's actually about 100 top 10 wellbeing apps out there, depending on which Google search you look for. So it can be a bit of a minefield. So hopefully we'll give the listeners a few hints and tips today of what we think might be the best ones.
Yeah, it's interesting. And back to what you were talking there about the cost of some of these apps. I was quite surprised, actually, when I kind of had a quick look the other evening while travelling home on the train around the apps that are available, and some of the costs are quite high on some of these, if you like, the more renowned apps, and I found that quite surprising.
It's that subtle shift, isn't it? Because I keep getting this a lot as well, and if I could do all my training for free, I would. If there was a big funding pot from someone somewhere that allowed me to eat food and pay my mortgage and stuff, I'd do as much as I could for free. My accountant doesn't like that much, but however. And I think that's the thing here is, there's been a huge amount of money and time and energy put into these apps, and someone somewhere, even though it's doing amazing things for people, someone somewhere needs to earn the money at the back end. So it is hard sometimes. I think this is the best thing, and we're lucky. We live in a very privileged sort of corporate world as such, and we and maybe many of the listeners do as well. They'll be fortunate enough to work for large organisations. One of the best things that an organisation can do is pay for these apps on behalf of their employees. I mean, we do see that sort of headspace being rolled out across companies. And a lot of those organisations, the app organisations, will have a very reduced rate for companies wishing to take on apps for their staff. Of course they are. You're suddenly going to get 8,000 people on your platform that you didn't have before. You're going to do a reduced rate. So, yeah, I think it is sad that maybe the more vulnerable individuals who probably need the apps even more, and sometimes prohibited from actually accessing them. But there are some free ones out there that are quite good. Some of the, I guess, the more benevolent ones are Hub of Hope, which actually is a signposting app to support. Stay Alive, which is a suicide app. You've got the Shout app, of course. So there are some real, when we get down to those grassroots support apps, i.e., these are the ones that are keeping people alive, such as the Samaritans, etc. You will find that they are accessible and free for all.
Oh, it's excellent. I suppose, again, it's like everything, isn't it? Is if you're getting the value, the help and support you need from them, it's probably cheaper damn sight cheaper, actually, than having to go to a therapist or getting that work, and easier for you to access. So, yeah, it's that value, isn't it, that you're getting back and that support from it. And, just going back to, some of the things you talked about there, the different ways that apps can help and support, what do you feel people should use the wellbeing apps for?
I think you need to understand fully why you're using the Wellbeing app in the first place. Is it because you have a general need in terms of you just want to, you want to have a little check-in, you want to sort of keep track of your mental health and whatever that looks like, in which case you've got a much different reason for someone who is maybe using a specific app because they're in support mode effectively. There are lots of medical providers, Nuffield Health and Virgin Pulse, and there are other providers out there, of course, but they develop their own health apps as part of their wellbeing programs. So I think before you sort of, I'm going to go and download loads of apps and see which one's the best, I think you've got to decide what you want it for. And this goes back to, and as you remember, probably a couple of years ago now, we talked about habit forming.
Yeah.
If you download an app and you don't use it, you won't use it. It's as simple as that. And even if you pay for it, there's this perception is, if I pay for it, I value it. I have probably 8 wellbeing apps on my phone. And the reason I have 8 is that I sometimes show people them. I only use Headspace, even though I know the other ones are really good and really important. But I only use Headspace because for me, my well-being route is I want to delve into mindfulness, do some meditations, and which helps improve my sleep, it helps improve my concentration, and so on and so forth. Some of the other ones I started to use, and daily check-ins and how you feeling today, and tell me out of 10. And for me, they just didn't work. And by the next day, I'd forgotten I was meant to do it. So I think you need to have a purpose before you go, right, I need to feel better now, I need to be well, and then decide what you want. And obviously, we're talking, what I think I'll produce on the back of this, actually, Craig, is a guide to wellbeing apps, and maybe we can send that out to the members at some stage. Might take me a couple of weeks because, as I told you, there's 100 top 10 apps out there. So yeah, I'll put that together because I think that's a really useful guide, because I don't even know. There's probably 1 or 2 wellbeing apps coming out every month, and keeping track of them is quite difficult. So there you go. You've given me an action point from today's podcast. Thank you.
You're more than welcome, but I do believe you give it yourself. So thank you very much for that, Simon.
Hi, we're the UK and Ireland SAP user group. Did you know we're a fiercely independent not-for-profit? Did you know we're a vibrant community of over 6,500 SAP users? And did you know we help each other by sharing resources, championing education and influencing SAP's future development? Well, you do now. If you'd like to get the most from your SAP investments and be in the know, visit our website, sapusers.org/pod. We hope you enjoy the rest of the podcast.
On the flip side of that, so what shouldn't you use them for? I suppose, reflecting in my own mind and what you just said there about understanding why you're using them, I suppose we might be coming towards just don't go in blindly and just download and pay for these things without a specific purpose. But anyway, sorry, you answer it properly.
Yeah, I think again you're going down that route of when we think what we shouldn't use them for is in place of actual medical support. So if you they should always be used in conjunction with something. There should be, there should be a goal or an aim that you want to achieve out of them, whether it's better sleep, better eating, you want to exercise more, whatever that looks like, or you do want to journal. But if you're in genuine support, if you're in, you're sort of under a medical professional, then they will absolutely work as that sort of sideline element. I think people feel that actually, if I just use this particular route to support, and it's going to be an app because I love doing it on my phone. I don't think it's going to necessarily have the desired effect. If that, but used in conjunction with actual support, I think is the right way to do. And again, if they're consuming you, and this is a weird thing to say because you can meditate for an hour, you can meditate for however long you like. But if you find that you're spending more time on the Wellbeing app than you are walking out in the outside air or getting oxygen, it can be very and then we've got the whole neurodiverse individuals as well, and that sort of, sometimes there's a level of fixation that can come on it. I can only be well if I do this, or actually I need 4 apps to be well. You get that focus and fixation element in it. So yeah, I think apps are very beneficial, but I think you need to know the purpose of why you're using them. And then I think you need to, if you find that you're using them or relying on them too much, you've got to ask yourself why. What else can I be doing in conjunction with that Wellbeing app?
And on that point, I suppose I mentioned it earlier about on the cost and value. How, I suppose, effective can an app be versus a qualified professional helping you through a process or giving advice in improving your mental health?
So the good news is, because wellbeing apps in general, especially ones that sort of tackle anxiety or tackle depression, have been created and developed, designed, whatever that looks like, by medical professionals. What you'll find is a lot of the information contained within there is exact, is probably up to date, because most apps have proliferated in the last sort of 5-10 years. So we'll be using up-to-date methodologies and up-to-date support elements. But that said, your reliance, if you're reliant on an app for you to, without any other support services, then and you're in a particularly bad place from a mental health perspective, I'm not sure they're going to be as useful or as resourceful as to seeing an actual medical professional. And again, what I said before, if you've seen that medical professional and he's advised using some of these apps, that's absolutely fantastic. But I wouldn't say that, if you're, especially we're talking about mental health first aiders here, yes, let's signpost people to apps. But as you know, we try and signpost people to medical professionals first. So there's absolutely a place for wellbeing apps in this world. But I think if you're struggling, particularly with your mental health, and you think that the wellbeing apps are going to fix everything, I would urge that individual to try and get some real life support first of all, and then use those wellbeing apps. But what they might be, I've just triggered a little mind memory there, is using the app may actually help them understand why they're feeling the way they are, and that app might actually signpost them to get that access as well. So potentially the person first coming on that journey, they might get some solace or some reassurance from an app, and then I think they should go and seek medical professional help.
All about balance, I suppose, isn't it? That getting that balance right, and just kind of going back to something you mentioned earlier about becoming over reliant on apps, and I suppose the first step on that is understanding that you're becoming over reliant on them. What can people do if they feel they're becoming over reliant on apps to kind of wean themselves off or look for alternative help and support?
Well, I think it's one of those things, isn't it, where we should know, we should be our own self-governors on this one. For those of listeners with iPhones, obviously you can look at screen time, and if you find you're heavily into an app, and then you've got to ask yourself, why am I becoming so reliant on this? What else is missing from my support network? And I think one of the key things that you should do is, if you think, oh, actually, I'm spending a lot of time in this journaling app, or I'm spending a lot of time in this depression management app, is, should I speak to someone? And, we're talking here a real life person, whether that's over the phone, whether that's in person, whether that's via text message or WhatsApp, just to get someone else's view or someone else's level of support. Because I think if you do go down that route of, I'm only going to seek report from online, whether that's web-based or app-based, then you are missing out on a huge level of support, even just by talking or sharing that information. The good news is some of the suicide apps, the depression and anxiety apps, they actually are monitored, at the back end. And if some of your thoughts and feelings, that you're putting into there, get to a certain element, there are sort of outreach elements that you can activate on these apps as well. So it might be that something gets triggered the other way. As well. So yeah, but I think again there's no substitute. We're talking now, aren't we? There's no substitute to that human connection. And even if it's just asking your friends and family for their advice or recommendation, you say, I'm a bit too reliant on this app. Do you think I should do something? Now the key thing is, don't delete it immediately, because actually it's giving you something. If you find it's taking over your life, you've got options there. But actually, if you can think, well, I'm only going to use it for a couple of hours today, or I'm going to use it for 20 minutes, or so you start to reduce your reliance on it because you're talking about stuff to other people.
Yeah, and I suppose, again, back to what you were talking about there, that earlier on as well, about spending more time on the wellbeing apps and being outside and walking in the air and everything. We're recording this on a very snowy day, but, the brightness out there at the moment with the sun and the reflection of the snow is just, that vitamin D is there for you to soak up in abundance. And I was away for the weekend with friends at Centre Parks last week, and we went for a walk. Myself, my wife, sister-in-law, brother-in-law, and we saw a little family of deer in the forest. You know what? That just lifted me for the day. It was just not just out walking, but being with nature and seeing those animals in their habitat was just absolutely amazing. I don't think there's a substitute for that, and even just talking to people about it as well gives you that lift and sharing. So I would certainly agree with you there. And do you think the popularity of the apps is a temporary thing, or do you think it will go on and increase further in the future?
I do. I don't see an end to wellbeing apps or their delivery. And every time you talk to someone in this space, as an organisation, whether it's sort of a support organisation, it's like, well, we need to release an app, don't we? And then you just think, again, you're adding to the confusion, the mind blast that you're getting from all of these apps. So I don't necessarily think that the proliferation of them is the right way to do. But I think we need to look at what we've got already and see if we can make them better, different. I'm not going to go and change Mind or Calm or any of those. We're not going to be able to. We might be able to influence them as users, of course. But it's going to be what can we do better with the apps, or is it that we whether or not Apple start to put them into groupings? These are the sleep apps, these are the exercise apps, these are the motivation apps. And these are the user rated elements. These are the ones within apps purchases. So I think we can almost define them better and cluster them so people can make better choices about what they want. But I think the wellbeing apps are here to stay. You need to use them responsibly, and you need to use them when you when you feel that they're beneficial for you, not as because sometimes if you get like anything, I mean, what the reason that smartphones are so addictive, we pick them up so much, is because we get instant gratification. We get that instant hit of dopamine. And it's the same with a lot of the wellbeing apps, and if anyone's ever, it's not necessarily a wellbeing app, if anyone's ever done Duolingo, and you sort of, yes, you've achieved the bit, right, you click the owl or whatever it is to get onto the next bit. And it's designed actually like Candy Crush. You go down this route, you can now say yes in French or whatever that looks like. And I think that that gamification of apps is going to be critical as we move forward.
And also, when that's not without even thinking about the metaverse, if you like, and how we enter these into virtual reality. And I suppose personally, I have a slight concern about things like that, that if we're immersing ourselves in this world and we're doing so in isolation, I think we've talked about it before on an episode a couple of years ago, and I think it was brought to the fore a couple of weeks ago that the secret of happiness, the longest ever study that's ever been done in the secret of happiness, and it's still coming back to the quality of your relationships with people. And I think that is crucial. And, you said earlier about talking to people and sharing and, having those relationships, I think is crucial to any form of well-being.
It is. And I think if you look at, and you've used that sort of the metaverse there, haven't you, that sort of augmented reality, that virtual reality. And I'm just, the thing that always, I mean, I know it's, it's going to happen, some sort of thing, but it's, we have this 3D world outside of us already. And for me, what sums that up is if you go to a gig, and what you see for the most part is a wealth of people looking at the act that's on the stage through their mobile phones. You literally, there's this sea of mobile phones, and you're sort of, well, what are you really seeing? Are you seeing that the person on the stage because you're seeing them through the camera? But you're sort of, that's a different view. And I think that's the thing with virtual reality. Oh, well, I'd like to go for a walk in the park today. Well, go for a walk in the park. Well, I don't want to do that because it's cold and wet. But then naturally your senses are more heightened. So yeah, I'm old, Craig. So I'm not a huge fan of augmented reality. But obviously it has its place, and certainly in medical situations and stuff like that, it's incredible. So I'm not anti it. I just think when we're going down a well-being route, I think I'd always choose outdoors and real deers and all of that sort of stuff than virtual reality.
Very true. I'm with you on that one. And just when, as we come towards the end of our discussion, I suppose, now especially reflecting back on the wellbeing app side, are there any tips from you on how our listeners should choose the wellbeing app that might be right for them? And is there something they should be looking for?
Well, what I'm going to recommend in about sort of 2-3 weeks time is downloading the Thrive Guide to Wellbeing Apps, which is now in my head, sort of starting to form. We will be making that freely available. There's no in-app PDF purchases that will be on that. But I think it's, again, let's sort of, and dare I say, get a piece of paper, write down why you want to use the app, write down the goals, the end points, and again, don't it's not about the app as such. It's about, what do I want to get out of it? Is it going to enhance my life? And I think that's the key thing. And if you don't need it, why are you putting an extra burden on yourself? If you want to spend more focused time, get the one, and I'll try and remember what it is. Maybe we can put it in the show notes. As I say, the one that kills trees when you pick up your app. Because it will motivate you potentially, because you're like, oh, I want to win. I want to grow an oak tree. If focus time, you require an app for the other thing you can do is put your phone in a different room. You can do things physically to reduce that overwhelm. So I think, write down what you want to achieve from that. And it sounds corny, doesn't it? But when we write stuff down and we read it back to us, it becomes real. So we think, well, what do I want to do? Do I want to get better at meditation? Do I want to get better at mindfulness? Do I want to understand what they are? do I want to sleep better? Do I want to eat better? Do I want to exercise more? Am I struggling? Am I already diagnosed with depression and anxiety and I need a little bit extra? Whatever that is. And then you can then search for that specific app. Because again, if you just put Wellbeing app in, you're going to get everything. I mean, one of the ones I saw was you can put your music in a different order. I mean, yes, that might affect someone's well-being if their Spotify lists are all jumbled up. But yeah, again, different perception of well-being. What makes you feel well? And you can only achieve that from writing it down in front of you and seeing it on a piece of paper. Because otherwise, you're just downloading an app for downloading an app's sake.
Thanks, Simon. And as we do come to a close, can you share any updates on planned events that you're looking to run for our members in the coming weeks and months?
We have the SAP user group webinars, which are going strong. We have another one, I believe, on the 28th of March, which is absolutely fantastic. So looking forward to that one. It's Stress and Anxiety Revisited, but it's not for those of you who regularly tune into the webinars. It's not just a rehash. No, so no, that's really good. We've got anyone in Milton Keynes, and that's very reduced subset. We're doing a couple of community events. One on the 24th of March is a local event we're doing. But the thing that's most exciting for Thrive at the moment is, and I know we've touched upon neurodiversity in the workplace quite a lot, but we've just released our neurodiversity in the workplace instructor partner program. Oh. So what we're doing now is we're training as many people as want to, facilitators, coaches, educators, to go and deliver what we hope will eventually be the Thrive neurodiversity in the workplace training go-to. We want to be the MHFA England of neurodiversity training. So we've picked up a couple of large customers recently that are really helping us to push that vision forward. So yeah, watch this space. It's going to be very much a mental health and neurodiversity sort of a playground, if you like, for the next sort of 12 months as we try and get more people engaged. And Craig, obviously the whole reason that I started Thrive in the first place was to help one person at a time. And the more trainers we have out there, the more people talking about it, the more people we're going to help one person at a time.
Oh, fantastic. And if somebody wanted more information on that or to get in touch, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, there's, as always, it's time to thrive.co.uk, and the 2 is a number 2, so it's time to thrive.co.uk. My email address, I think, is all over the web, Simon at it's time to thrive.co.uk. And I also think my phone number is probably all over the web as well. But yeah, if anyone ever wants to get in touch, that's probably the easiest way to do it. We're not creating an app anytime soon. That said, though, one of our training platforms does actually have an app associated with it, but if someone else has developed it. But yeah, no, and please reach out, any organisations thinking about trying to do something different or educating their staff in well-being and looking after each other, then we're here to help. And as always, we love our partnership with the SAP user group, and we're hoping it's going to be a very long-term relationship.
Fantastic, and as do we, Simon. And thank you again for your time and sharing your insights into this what I feel is a very important subject. And to our listeners, I hope you enjoyed the conversation. And even if you're listening to this well in the future, whether it be 2023 or even 2024, the webinars Simon was talking about there for the user group are recorded and are available on the user group website for you to access at any time. So I hope you found this valuable. And until the next time, stay safe, stay well, and keep washing your hands.